Hey everyone, welcome to another modern set review. Today I'm going to be going over the cards released in Crimson Vow, or they're about to be released in Crimson Vow. I've broken this review a bit better, a bit more cleanly, hopefully. So let me know in the comment section down below if you prefer this format. Should be going through all these cards a lot more quicker and not spending 20-30 minutes talking about cards. Before I get started though, as usual, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button down below and that like button. It's the only real button that counts at this point. And that notification bell as well. Those 3 clicks really go a long way in helping others find my channel and you finding out my other content as well. So thank you for your support. So before we get started with the playable stuff, I want to go with the pet cards, the cards that are going to be in my pet decks. In particular, I want to look at the wolves or werewolves released in Crimson Vow, which seemingly are more interesting than ones in Midnight Hunt, ironically. Yeah, I mean, we got some pretty cool wolves and werewolves, and I recently had a werewolf deck tech, as most of you should know already. So, Ascendant Pack Leader is interesting. I don't think it's the one-drop wolf that we really want. It's okay. I don't think it's going to be necessarily playable in Modern, just because it's waiting for you to cast 4 CMC or greater spells, and it's not really that useful, unfortunately. We got excited for a minute, but not anymore. Volatile Arsonist, though. This one's a bit more interesting. It's 5 mana. If you're playing a werewolf deck, you're not going to be playing 4 of them. But maybe as a 1-of or a 2-of, Menace Haste. You know, Menace might as well be flying, you know, against a lot of modern decks. It's not going to be blocked. It's a 4/4 out the gate. Whenever it attacks, it's dealing 1 damage to up to 1 of each creature, player, and planeswalker, which is awesome. And when it flips, it does the same thing, but it deals 2 damage instead of 1, and it's a 5/5. That's pretty awesome. This is a pretty cool werewolf, and I'm looking forward to test it next time I get to my werewolves deck. Outbrook Caretaker. Oh boy. Now I know Commander players are freaking out about this card, but say it's 6 mana. It's just expensive. You're not going to be playing 4 of in Modern. You know, again, we were playing werewolf decks here. But for 6 mana, it's a 4/4 hexproof, so it's basically dodging everything at this point. Apart from like Wrath of God or whatever, Supreme Verdict. At the beginning of combat on your turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on another target creature you control. So assuming you have at least 1 other creature, which hopefully you do by turn 6 or 5, depending on the curve. You know, it's doing something immediately. So this creature doesn't have haste, but it's doing something the turn it comes down, which is important in Modern. That is relevant. When it flips, it still has hexproof. Your other permanents get hexproof. And that's interesting. It's permanents, not creatures. And it has the the 2 +1/+1 counters, but on each creature you control on combat. So it's basically GG. If your opponent has no answers, this is like the Huntmaster Plus, right? Huntmaster is usually the card that ends games within a couple of turns. This is the same thing. Like, if your opponent has no answer for this, they either have lost or you had already lost by the time you resolved this card. So, interested to play with this card. Last but not least, Child of the Pack. Interesting 4-drop. Huntmaster colors or Huntmaster costs. It's a 2/5. So, unlike Huntmaster, when it's not flipped, this card's a bit harder to kill. It's not going to die to bolt. You're going to have to bolt it twice or whatever. You're going to have to spend more money. Or you're going to have to spend more mana. More money, I guess, to kill it out the gate, which is great. It's a mana sink as well, mid to late game when you have nothing else to do. You have 4 CMC, 4 mana at your disposal. Great. Create another wolf creature token. When it flips, it has trample, and it's a 5/5, which is super relevant. And other creatures you control get +1/+0, so it's kind of like a lord as well. Everything about this card is interesting to me. I'm actually curious to see how it plays out. So I've spent enough time on my pet cards. Let's get to the cards that I felt were playable when I first saw them spoiled, but I think probably not going to make the cut after I actually reviewed the set and I went through all the cards. Everyone's talking about Dollhouse of Horrors. Now I'm including it in my non-playable category. I'm ready to be proven wrong. It's one of those cards where there may be one card printed at some point in the future where all of a sudden Dollhouse of Horrors becomes ridiculous. I looked at Reanimator decks that are currently going around in Modern, and I'm not sure they want to necessarily make room for Dollhouse of Horrors. You're going to have to play a pretty devoted, like, Artifact Construct style deck. Maybe, you know, Artifact/Blue deck to make this work in any interesting way, and then I'm not sure what creatures you're trying to copy. I'm ready to be proven wrong. I'm putting this in the non-playable category for now. I didn't go and look at all the 15,000 Magic cards that are legal in Modern to see if there's something that breaks with this. It's possible there is. For now, it's in the non-playable category. Kaya, Geist Hunter, another card which I said that might be playable in Black-White Tokens decks. I could still be wrong on this. When I first talked about it on Twitter, I said, hey, Black-White Tokens players should at least try it out and test it out. I'm sure they will. I'm curious to see what comes of it. Now that I look at it, though, I think it's probably going to fall in the non-playable category. But it's still a 3 CMC Planeswalker that I feel would fit pretty well in the tokens deck. So we'll see, but I'm keeping it in the non-playable category after reviewing it enough times. Manaform Hellkite got me, interested for a bit, because it had like a very Shark Typhoon-y like effect for slightly less mana. The thing that made me put this card in the non-playable category, at least for me, is the last sentence. Exile that token at the beginning of the next end step. So you don't keep the tokens you're generating. I suppose that makes sense. This card would be a bit bonkers if you were able to keep them. It's a flying 4/4 for 4. It has no haste, and you have to invest more mana to get any value out of it. So I'm keeping this in my no-go category. There's probably a better card you can play in its place, like Shark Typhoon. Geist Light Snare, another card where I said, well, I misread it. Where I think I just assumed, and I probably, I clearly assumed wrong. So I thought that this spell costs 1 less for each spirit you controlled, or each enchantment you controlled, which I thought was like crazy. I mean, right, I'm like, why wouldn't you play like a 1-mana mana leak in a spirit deck or an enchantment deck? But no, when I actually reviewed the cards properly after, I realized no. I mean, at most you're reducing it by 1 for a spirit and by 1 for an enchantment. In which case, this might see some play in spirit decks anyway, especially in the sideboarded games, because, well, they do have enchantments in their sideboard, like Rest in Peace or whatever that might come in. So this might make a bit more sense, but it's in my non-playable category. Another card that no one looked at from Modern, but I at least did, and I believe I discussed on my Twitter, so I think it needs to be mentioned here. Catilda, Dawnheart, Martyr, I thought might see some play in enchantment decks, or enchantress decks, I should say, because it does feed off of enchantments and spirits, which is fine. But looking at it now more and more, enchantment decks probably have something better to do. It is a legendary creature, so it's also limited in how many you can play at any given time, and by that I mean 1. And on the flip side, the disturb ability is cool, but you need a creature for it to work, and if you're not playing a lot of creatures in an enchantment deck, well, then all of a sudden it becomes kind of pointless. So this is also going in my no-go category. Alright, so cards that I feel are maybe playable. Not for sure, but I feel have very good potential. So Ulvenwald Oddity is ridiculous, right? Like, I don't think people have realized that this pushes now the boundaries for green stompy playable creatures, or at least for mono green stompy. For 2 green, 2 colorless, a 4/4 trample haste, already just alone on value is pretty darn good. I challenge you to find something better for that cost and those 2 abilities and that power and toughness. But then, when you have a bit more mana, which you normally will do in green decks that play this card, you can transform it, and that's it. It's a permanent transformation to also have still trample haste 8/8. And other creatures you control get +1/+1 and have trample and haste. So at that point, again, in the Stompy deck, you're going wide. When this flips, it's essentially GG, right? So your opponent has to panic to get rid of this creature, because if you have any sort of board presence at all, I don't know what is going to happen. I'm going to revisit Stompy in the new year. This is going to be in there in some number, and I'm almost certain I'm going to stick with it. So this for me is definitely going to be a card that's most likely going to be playable. Even if it's going to be playable in decks that are not tier 1 or tier 2. Chandra, Dress to Kill. 3 CMC Planeswalkers always need some attention, at least in terms of testing. I'm not sure this is necessarily going to go in mono red decks or burn decks. It could. Generally speaking, the rule for those type of decks is it has to deal damage the minute it comes into the battlefield. This does, but it's only 1, so it's not the most impactful damage in the world. But it is dealing 1 to a target creature or planeswalker, so it's kind of like Ren and 6 like in that sense. And it does effectively cost 2 CMC, because when you do that first +1 ability, you're getting 1 red mana back. So boom, you have 1 extra mana at your disposal on turn 3, and you could cast whatever you need to cast. Lightning Bolt, Lava Spike, Monastery Swift Sphere, whatever it is, you can do it. So in that sense, I think Chandra Dress to Kill is going to be seeing some form of play. Almost certainly. I think it's pretty much borderline. It's wait and see. I'm curious to see where it fits. It can't go in 3-color decks because there's just not enough red spells for its second ability. But maybe in a 2-color red deck, or red X decks, I think we're going to see Chandra Dress to Kill floating around. Cemetery Gatekeeper, obviously giving you flashbacks to Eidolon of the Great Revel. I don't think it's as good as Eidolon of the Great Revel. Eidolon of the Great Revel is just kind of like, it's boost, boom, it's there. You're punishing your opponent for casting cheap spells, which a lot of Modern is. Here you have to put a bit more work into it. It requires a bit more pieces to align. But when they do, your opponents are going to be paying a lot of life to be playing, fetch lands or shock lands, which is like very central, very core to Modern. And this is just going to be, a difficult card to deal with. It has First Strike. It's a 2/1, which is relevant with First Strike, so you can be a bit more aggressive with it, and not worry about getting chump block with smaller creatures. I'm almost, this should probably be in my definitely playable category, which is the next category, but I'm keeping it on defense because I haven't been playing Burn for years, so I don't know. Burn players will know more. Let me know in the comment section down below. Headless Rider, definitely going to be seeing, I feel like it's going to be seeing play in zombie decks. At least zombie decks are going to be testing it out. Now again, it's not a high tier deck, but who cares? This is Modern. All decks can be playable and winnable, as the proof is in the pudding, right? And all those MTGO results. So I think zombie decks are definitely going to enjoy Headless Rider. It's a 3-mana 3/1. Not the best rate, but you're really interested about its ability. Whenever Headless Rider or another non-token zombie you control dies, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. There's plenty of dying going on. In zombie decks, and Giraffe Messenger is a creature that dies often and comes back, so you get double effects from that. Headless Rider is going to be seeing maybe 1 of 2 of play in a lot of zombie decks. Voice of the Blessed, I don't feel a lot of people talked about this card. I feel like this card slots in pretty easily into life gain decks. Soul Sisters. Tell me if I'm wrong here. This seems to benefit a lot from life gain. You're gaining a lot of life in life gain decks, and this just gets better and better as it gets bigger and bigger. I'm almost certain it's going to see play in Soul Sisters decks, but since no one at all talked about it, I'm keeping it in the probably playable or might be playable category. Let me know in the comment section down below. Winged Portent. Okay. Again, I feel like there are probably a lot of decks that can satisfy the with flying constraint enough to make this card really interesting to play. It's blue, 3 CMC, it's not hard to cast in Modern, and at worst it's 3 CMC to draw 3 cards, right? If you're playing Spectral Procession or something in a token-like deck, I think it's totally doable. Or maybe the Spirits decks can play some number of these. Obviously the cleave cost is kind of prohibitive. You're probably not going to get there, although Banned Spirits could pull it off when they get to 6 lands, or 6 CMC worth of mana producers, but whatever. I think this will see play most likely. Not 100% confident, but high confidence. Inspired Idea, same idea here. I have high confidence it'll see some form of play in decks that don't necessarily care about having too many cards in hand by mid to late game. Tempo decks are one of those types of decks. So in tempo decks, which I have plenty of experience in, turn 4 or 5, you've already exhausted a lot of the cards in your hand. So if you draw 3 and all of a sudden you can only have 4 cards in hand, that's probably okay. Those 3 cards are probably going to be very useful, at the very least to get off the top of your deck if they're all lands. Just get rid of them. So, I think Inspired Idea has a good potential here. It's in my potential category here. Probably playable, might be playable, we'll see. The cards I feel, this is what everyone's been waiting for. The cards I feel are almost certainly going to see play, or should be seeing play. Cemetery Illuminator. In Spirit decks, I feel like this is a card advantage engine, so let's really read it really quick. So 3 CMC, not hard, flying. Whenever Cemetery Illuminator enters the battlefield or attacks, exile a card from a graveyard, acting as kind of pseudo graveyard hate there. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. Once each turn, not your turn and your opponent's turn, You may cast a spell from the top of your library if it shares a card type with a card exiled with Cemetery Illuminator. So you can be very selective about which cards, obviously, that you're exiling from graveyards, and then you can cast. You're basically, be able to extend the limits of your hand by one, but you're able to cast the top card of your library at any given time. And Spirit decks play a lot of flash or instant speed spells, so I would be shocked if Spirit pilots didn't, use Cemetery Illuminator in some way in the 75. Lantern of the Lost is yet another graveyard hate artifact card for 1 CMC. I feel like it's a better one than Soul Guide Lantern. It is exiling all cards from all graveyards, so I guess some decks that care about their graveyard might not like that. But generally speaking, it enters battlefield, exiles target card from a graveyard. We've seen that before. For 1, tap it, exile it, so you can bring it back, which is fine. No one's really recurring this, realistically. Exile all cards from all graveyards, then draw a card. So you're drawing no matter what. It's not one or the other. I think this is probably going to replace Soul Guide Lantern in my opinion. Cultivator Colossus. Yeah, all those primetime decks I feel are going to be playing some number of this as potentially an alternate win con, or they're going to sculpt their decks to work with this instead. Whatever it is, this is seeing play. I'm almost certain going to be seeing some number of them. Maybe like I said, alternate win con is my biggest guess. Wait and see what the primetime pilots decide to do with Cultivator Colossus. All right, Blood Vial Purveyor. This card is still kind of crazy, even looking at it again now. 2 black, 2 colorless, 5/6, flying trample. What? That alone is already pretty darn good. Skip the middle ability for a second. Whenever Blood Purveyor attacks, it gets +1/+0 for each blood token defending player controls. +1/+0 until end of turn. Obviously, it's not there, but it will be. Okay, cool. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player creates a blood token. So every time an opponent casts a spell, they're going to have to think about this card getting bigger next turn and swinging in for 6, 7, 8 damage. It has trample as well. So really, what's going to matter here is, do those blood tokens really matter that much? Is it really going to hurt you that much by giving your opponent blood token after blood token after blood token? If it means that this creature gets bigger and bigger for every blood token that your opponent has. They're only going to be able to expend so much mana to get rid of those blood tokens in time. And they have to discard a card to be able to draw the card. So something has to happen. My gut feeling is that this card's going to be great. It's going to be seeing play. It doesn't have to go in vampire decks, although vampire decks are almost certainly going to be playing this card. They'd be nuts if they didn't. But I think this is going to be seeing play in just non-vampire black decks. I can't wait to test with it. I hope I'm not wrong. I don't think I am. This card is nuts. Unless I'm missing something, this card is nuts and great rate all around. I've been thinking forever. Do I really care about giving my opponent blood tokens? I don't think I care. As long as this creature sticks around. All right, Thirst for Discovery. I think there's a bunch of Thirst for cards. Instant speed. Draw 3 cards and discard 2 cards unless you discard a basic land card. I think for mono blue decks or blue red decks, this is going to be pretty easy to accomplish. You just have to play a few more basics. And then boom, you get to draw 3 cards and get rid of a land that you overdrew on. I think this is definitely going to be seeing play. Maybe more than the other Thirst for cards, which is why it's in my playable category. Last but not least, Geralt Visionary Stitcher. Zombie decks, again, if you're playing blue-black or blue-black X, like my Grixis zombie deck, you're going to be seeing probably 1 or 2 of these at least. Mostly because it's giving your zombies flying. So, sometimes zombie decks lack that ability to reach and close out games, and board stalls are a big problem. This gets rid of the board stall for you. So, just that alone, and it's a 1/4, harder to kill. Fatal Push is going to need its Revolt trigger. Bolt won't take care of it. Unholy Heat needs Delirium. It's harder to get rid of. And its ability is not that bad. For 1 blue, sacrifice another non-token creature. Create an XX blue zombie creature token where X is sacrifice creature's toughness. Sorry. So you could use this against Gerald's Messenger. You could use this against a creature that's about to die anyway. You could chump block with a creature and then sacrifice it. So you could generate more and more tokens this way. Zombie tokens that are also flying. Great engine for zombie decks. That's it for my Modern Ret set review. It still ended up being 20 minutes. I'm sorry. But I tried my best to go as quickly as possible. I'm not super excited about the cards that came out in Crimson Vow. But it is what it is. This is the last set of the year. Some cards are powered up. Some cards are powered down. I think there's enough tools here for us, enough toys here for us to play with and see what's what. But these are my picks. What are your picks? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you enjoy my content in general, please subscribe and hit that notification bell down below. Those few clicks go a really long way in helping others find my content and helps my channel grow. Follow me on Twitter and Facebook, share my content on social media. That also helps others find their way to my videos and spreads the word even further. And of course, if you like making money, check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description of this video. In particular, check out the Patreon Rewards program. Basically works like this. You give me your Patreon dollars every month. I buy and open up sealed product on this channel using those dollars. And I send you back that money at the end of every year in the form of rares and mythics. You get one non-bulk rare or mythic for every consecutive month you've been a patron, and every card is worth anywhere between $3 and $15. But I mean, even if you lowball it at an average of $5 per card, you're at the very least getting your money back, but odds are you're getting even more. There are a lot more details on my Patreon page, so check it out. Thanks and have a good one.